All right, welcome back. This is still the POLITY reaching you live from Abuja. I'm Amadin Ogbewe. Like I said before, I've been joined now in the studio by legal practitioner Kelechi Anwu to do some justice to the issues affecting the state of the nation today, this November 1st, 2023. Welcome to the program. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So I always, want to get the different views from legal practitioners whenever we have any, will I call it notable or popular or trending or very important decisions made in the court of law. And we had one made just last week, particularly in the highest court in the land, the apex court, the Supreme Court, which affirmed the presidency of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu once and for all. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that decision before we move ahead to more issues of today.
Yes, what I would say on the decision is that the Supreme Court is the final bus stop of every litigation in the land. And the Supreme Court is not final because they are not just final because they are infallible. They are final because they are the last bus stop. So as it stands now, it's every appeals, every litigation as regards to presidential election ends here. Then we wait for another election cycle. Whether their decisions is correct or incorrect, it is not left for anybody guessing. Whatever they say binds on every other person. So everybody would have to hold whatever opinion they have in adverse or in favor, because the Supreme Court has spoken and it is so. They are the law.
That's fair enough. But if we can a little, just to comment on what the implications could be going forward. Let's speak particularly to the attempt by the PDP to bring in the matter of the president's Chicago State stint and the controversies that I've seen to follow that time. The fact that the Supreme Court didn't allow it, what does that imply? Because some say if it had been allowed and rejected or ruled against, then that would be the end of that matter. But the fact that it wasn't even allowed means it can come up again. Is that true?
Of course. It has not been litigated upon. It's just a mere application to bring it in, of which it is not proper before the court. So in future proceedings, it can be brought, to that regard, if if an avenue presents itself. It's one area that will lawyers and litigants and constitutional enthusiasts would want to draw water from and test the waters as regards to the operationality of our constitution and those provisions that it provides, that clearly provides about the qualification and disqualification of presidents and the rest. Now in future scenarios, such positions could be challenged. It could be a position where you call upon the courts to interpret on such subject matter, again, because as at the moment it has not been caught up by res judicata. It has not been adjudicated upon, so there is no concrete ruling on the subject matter itself except the application.
All right, but there is this argument that if he has served as president, these issues can't come again. I remember there was, I can't recall the public official now, but there were issues with his NYSC certificate, or whether he didn't have one or so. But he had served at a lower level. So his argument back then was that what NYSC basically means is service to the nation. If I have served as a state assembly member for 4 years, I have fulfilled that stipulation that I need to serve my country. So if President Tinubu has served a full tenure as president, can any of this come up again? The fact that he has held the position already?
That position is not covered by any law. None that I know of. The qualification sections and disqualification sections are clearly in black and white, and they are very explicit as to what should be and what is not. Importing these innuendos it's overstretching the bounds of the interpretation. It's giving it an unorthodox interpretation to what is legibly visible.
All right, that's fair enough. We'll be seeing how this turns out. One of the things we always talk about when these issues arise is how it will eventually affect other cases and, add to the jurisprudence. I hope I use that word correctly.
Yes. And the situation that has just been created is to the effect that it has not now been made a locus classicus. It has now been adjudicated upon. It can be cited in cases. It has now become an authority of its own. Now it adds to the jurisprudence of our legal adjudication, and whether if it is right or wrong, whether the Supreme Court will determine further decisions based on this. You might not know, the Supreme Court might one day depart from its ruling. They've done it in several cases.
You mean the Supreme Court can make a decision and then
they can depart in its ruling. There are decisions in this country that the Supreme Court have made, and in the next decision they affirm that they depart from the previous ruling. That is no longer the law. So as the day goes by, there is an evolution to the knowledge, and the legal brims are being espoused, and there are implications that many things begins to unfold.
Just to cut in, does this count as an example of what you've just said? The current lead counsel for the APC, pardon me, not current because the case is over. The counsel at the time, I think it's SAN. Wale Olanipekun, yes. I think, yeah. It is on record that he has had cases at the Supreme Court where new evidence was allowed at the Supreme Court, even though it wasn't initially part of it. But this time around, the reverse was the case.
Yes, and like I said, I wouldn't want to go into the rationale behind the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the law. They are the fulcrum upon which our adjudications are anchored on. Whatever they pronounce is the final decision. So the reasons, whether if it is right or wrong, is left for further decisions in the future. Whether if they would adopt their present ruling in the future decisions, or they will depart from the instant ruling and the instant decisions they've made in this case. That will be left to the future to decide, future cases to decide.
All right, that's fair enough. So we'll move quickly now to the issue of the vice president, the PDP presidential candidate for 2023, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. He made some recommendations and proposals going forward. One of those was that issues of litigation regarding elections should end before the new president is sworn in. And the second was a rotational presidency, 6-year term, and that will go across the 6 zones, and then, and so on and so forth. And then we had the other matter of majority of votes. He said over 50% of votes cast should determine the winner, and it shouldn't just be perhaps the highest, even though it is not, up to a majority, an actual majority in the sense of it. So, and then I believe there's also the issue of electronic voting. So all of these, which of these do you think, if any, would enrich our electoral system?
Yes, I get the point, but I do not buy entirely into the idea. I will state the reasons. Now, having a region, a rotational presidency that is cut across regions will means you are having a regional president. It means when it gets to my region, I am at liberty to squander or useless Nigerians' funds and for my region or whatever I deem fit. Now, that would not be a plausible suggestion to make in a very cosmopolitan country like Nigeria. Now, if you look at our homogeneous existence, you look at that we have so many regions, so many tribes, so many religious inclinations, so many cultural inclinations. We have diverse things. There are so much diversity in the country. Now, if you begin to make presidency rotate like this, when is he going to get to people? Let's say, if he gets to this region, the next time it is getting to that region will be in. Now, if I were to make a proposition, I will propose that we fall back to the regional government.
What does that entail?
It entails that every region should be able to take care of themselves. Now we have we weaken the federal system. The capital system, the capital city is weakened. Now the regional governments are allowed to control their region and pay royalty to the government. Now in you look at a country like America, you look at the states. Most states are independent on their own. They have every resources to their region. You look at states like California, they run their own thing. The only thing that is they have things generally are things that are covered by the federal laws. You understand? Things like the armed forces, things like the currencies. But you look at police, economy, every state, every region within that area is covered by. And then you look at areas like United Kingdom, where you have Scotland, Wales, and England, and the rest. So you see, there each region takes care of itself, and manage their economy. Whatever comes from their region, you manage it, and then pay a certain percentage to the central government. That way, every region will develop at their own pace. If you fail to develop your region, it is to your own detriment or to your own credit. If you develop your region, it is your own credit. And if it is done that way, now in such situation, part of what was proposed in the national conference that has been held over time is that we should revert back to the regional government. We have just one president and have various vice presidents, but the president is no longer as powerful as he is. He no longer controls the entire country. Now, each region is to control. This president is merely a ceremonial head, while each of these regional presidents or vice presidents controls their region, manages the affairs of their region, and develops their region. That way, you decentralize the system, you decentralize development, and you decentralize the management of economy and the development within the area. Now, that way...
But would these regions have their own leaders? Or how does that work?
Of course. Now,
would this be like mini presidents within a presidency? How would that work really?
We once had a regional government in Nigeria. Don't forget. We once had a regional government where we have the northern region, the western region, the mid-belt region. So you understand. And it worked perfectly. That was the focal point of our economic growth. That was when we had the economic boost. Because each region will no longer depend. The people of the southwest will no longer say, our resources we are waiting for resources from the north. Now, the people of the north will not say, the people of Niger Delta has oil. Now, the people of Niger Delta will no longer say, gold in the north. So, in their circumstances, you see, we will have a more productive society, in the sense that every region will, on the basis of their own, tackle their resources, manage their resources. If there are explorations to be made, if there are mineral resources that are within your area, you deal with it as it should be and pay royalty to the federal government, who in turn takes care of things that are covered within the federal laws and the federation. Now, that way, you will not be having states depend every month on Abuja to share allocations. Every state, every region will now be hustling on what more productive things to put into bay in order to survive. Every region can be able to survive on their own, but their over-reliance on Abuja is the problem that we are having. Now, we have persons who travel from different constituency to Abuja to come and buy a car of 150 million. Some of them have not even seen 150 million before they got to the National Assembly. Some have, and some might, and you see, some of them do not have that in their account, but they are driving a car of 150 because there is a collective resources. If there were resources that you're closer to your people, those resources are gotten from your people, and your people manages those resources. They go into the exploration, and they suffer for it, trust me, you will not bring your 150 million naira car home. But because the resources that are coming are not within the locality, the people are not suffering to get those resources. If, let's take for instance, if Abuja, for as it is has now been pronounced as a state, is managed by, is allowed to manage its own resources. Now, at the moment, we might not know the resources that are in Abuja. We might not know the mineral deposits that are in Abuja. But if there is no allocation, there is no annual, monthly allocation from the federal government, we take that away. Whoever becomes the governor, whoever is the governor of that state, will look for an alternative means. You understand? And that way, what do? You industrialize. The only option you have is to industrialize. And what would the industrialization do? It creates more GDP. It creates more job opportunities. That's the point we've not looked at. We look at the exploration of oil and selling of that oil. We've not looked at the industrialization of other sectors. But the regional government will make those industrialization come alive, because each region will now try to fend for themselves. Each region will now try to make up something meaningful for their region.
Right, that's fair enough. Speaking on that issue, we'll still see, what these recommendations end up, or how they end up, so to speak. But moving on, I'd like to get your thoughts on the issue currently ongoing in terms of the rift, or the alleged rift, between the Rivers State governor and his predecessor. We say that the president and the People's Democratic Party governors have waded into the matter, and they seem to be sort of working together. Some persons have condemned the governors, the PDP governors, for being so familiar with the opposition president. What do you make of what's going on in the state, and what is being done to resolve it?
In Nigeria, we enjoy treating the symptoms of sickness other than the sickness itself. Now, I saw a video by one of the TV stations in Nigeria, where Governor Wike, His Excellency Governor Wike, said that he bought the forms of the entire contestants of the election. That video is alive, and it happened. And it is something that should never have been in the first place. Because you don't go about buying forms, it means you are inadvertently making investments that you are expecting returns. Now, it's something that should be outlawed. In fact, the Electoral Act says each person, each candidate, each aspirant are to purchase their form, are to go to their parties and obtain their forms. Now, most of this, the constitution of these political parties clearly specify that parties will sell their persons who are interested in an election should purchase their form, and not one person collectively purchasing the form of every other person. Now, don't forget that our Electoral Act and some other laws like the Company and Allied Matters Act forbids certain actions. These actions are exploitative actions. Like now, a company cannot fund an election. A company cannot fund an election. And also, a government should not also fund an election. Yes, elections should be funded by personal funds of persons who are aspiring to that position. It is very wrong for anybody to use public fund to fund an election of a private individual who has not also gotten into office. It means that is pure misappropriation of public fund. Now, if we look at that, at the point where he bought those forms, he allegedly bought those forms for these persons, he had already created a scenario where he is expecting a return of investment. Now, the issue that is happening now is a time bomb that we all know was waiting to happen. It is one thing for somebody to be installed, projected into the position, and you expect that at the end of the day, the person who is projecting, we expect to have dominance, not forgetting that the person you're projecting is also a person of his own. He is entitled to his own reasoning and his own actions. Now, we now have this situation where we have this side of the fence is alleging that the former governor is making some demands, and this side of the fence is alleging that they cannot meet up with the demands of the governor. Now, it now puts what I clearly stated earlier, that those investments should never have been. Every person should have been responsible for getting into the government by himself. So you, at the end of the day, you don't owe anybody anything. It is a public fund. It is a fund made for the development of the state. It should not be diverted into any private coffer. So anybody asking anybody, if that story is true, anybody asking anybody to bring in public fund for personal utilization is a criminal and should be treated as such. Now, I am saying, what I'm saying in essence is, a governor of the state, when elected, should be allowed to exercise the powers of a governor. He should be allowed to exercise the powers within his reach. He should be allowed to take care of the mandate that has been given to him and develop the state. Now, the predecessor should be able to exit the seat totally exit the seat, and allow the person who, the successor, an air of freedom to exercise such administrative function in totality. That is just my own.
That's fair enough. But what do you make of the backlash that the PDP is getting, that they are too chummy and too
I would
friendly with the
I would
president?
publicly say that PDP is almost becoming a moribund party. The PDP does not know how to be an opposition. They are not. They were not built with the idea of being an opposition. If you look at throughout the electioneering campaign, and even the advent of certain other political parties which sprung up along the line, you could see SDP gaining weight. You could see Labour Party gaining weight. Now, before now, it used to be a two-horse race, but you could see clearly during the election that we had. The PDP was nowhere to be found. They were clearly nowhere. A party who controlled almost every 80% of the seats were nowhere to be found within the election period. Now, you would not be surprised at the end of the day if they decide to, like most persons would postulate, that it is still one system. Whether APC or PDP, they are one people. It is somebody who will move from here to here the next day and move, as long as there is an interest that is being achieved. Now, this common interest is what binds these two political parties. And when there are common interests, everybody will put aside their political differences. Take, for instance, what is happening at the National Assembly. On this program, we've once talked about diverse political parties in the National Assembly. And now, there is proposition to acquire vehicle. We expected a robust opposition from the opposition of political parties, including those that are coming in for the very first time. But you can see, just like the common parlance would say it, when you're eating and talking is not a good table manner. At the moment, everybody's mouth is sealed, because there is a common interest. There is this saying that says, when two enemies meet in a different land, they now become, in a very distant land, they become friends. They have now become friends on the platter of interest. So, what propels Nigerian political atmosphere is interest. Personal interest, not the interest of the nation. It has nothing to do with the interest of Nigeria. It has nothing to do with what Nigeria will gain. It has more to do with what individuals, persons who are involved, persons who are interested, persons who are in need are gaining. The interest must always align and bring them to the table of negotiation and renegotiation.
Well, that's fair enough. We'll watch and see how that turns out. Even though the comments continue to roll in, but we'll see how it turns out. Well, moving on to other issues now. Something happened just about a day or two ago. I just want to get your thoughts on it. The president made what's it called, a clarification or sort of an order that certain persons should not be found within the FEC meeting, including his son, some advisors, and some other people. I'd like to get your thoughts on that. Do you think there was perhaps an abuse of assets going on for him to make that statement?
It is totally an abuse of. In fact, that is the lowest loan the nation has gone. That is not a party hall. It is not a playground. It is not. It is purely for national issue. That's fake Federal Executive Council hall. It's purely for a national issue office. It is where persons who attend such things are identified by our laws and known. It is not. It's not an all-comer affair. It is not. You wake up every morning, you go there or you go there at will. No, persons who there are statutorily or by privilege allowed to attend fake meeting. It is not personal appointment, something that you out of your own volition, I want to attend fake meeting today. No, it should not be. It is where the discussions of the nation is done. It is where policies of the nations are taken. So it is not a place where anybody, family members, allies, or cronies should be gathering. It is where businesses of the nation should be taken. And if you're not in any way saddled with that responsibility, you don't come there out of chance. You should never be there. In fact, if it is a country that is working by now, all the security details that were stationed to man that entry should be relieved of their duty. Because one, even if you are who you are, even if you are the president's son, the president's daughter, or even if you are the ambassador of any other country, if you're not allowed to come into that place, if you are an invitation is not granted to you to come into that place, if you are statutorily not allowed to come into that place, you have no business near the Federal Executive Council hall for any meeting.
That's fair enough. For the president to make that call, I guess it must have reached a certain level. So, if we can maybe just round up on this particular issue, there's been a lot of talk about the supplementary budgets. I'll just call out some parts of the budget that have got people talking. The federal government budgeted, I'll quote the exact figures, the sum of 5.095 billion naira for the purchase of a presidential yacht under the capital expenditure Nigerian Navy, and 5.5 billion naira for education loan fund in the 2023 supplementary budget. People really, or some stakeholders have really brought out this to sort of juxtapose in terms of the amount given to this particular bit of education and what we're seeing to get a yacht for the president. What do you make of all of this? We also saw that a couple of billions were allocated to renovate and to for the State House, so to speak, even though 6 months before the president, or just 6 months ago, there was some renovations also ongoing. Now there are other ones. We also have for the First Lady's office, the office of the president's wife, a couple of billions have also been sent that way in terms of acquisition of, I believe, vehicles and others. What do you make of these amounts that are flying about?
Now, the budget itself is ridiculous in its nature, and I do not understand why at the critical point of our nation like this, everybody understands. It's common knowledge that Nigeria is broke. It is common knowledge that we do not have money. It is common knowledge that the president has from time to time asked us to buckle up and make certain concession. And it is common knowledge that over time we've been told that we should cut some of we the poor masses should be able to cut some expectations and certain things. Now, but this is not reciprocated. It is not reciprocated in the planning and spending of public funds. Now, take for instance the figures you've just read. First of all, I wish to categorically state here that the office of the First Lady, it is not recognized by any law. It is an illegal position. It is a position which should never be.
But there should be provision for this.
There should never be provision for. There should never be provision. If anybody wants to marry, if anybody wants to get into public position, you should know how to get into public position. There is no law barring a wife and husband from holding public position if you aspire to be. So that for the basis that your wife is a president, does it mean you should automatically, as a man, should automatically have a position in the government if you are not given? Now, these are not SAs that are clearly spelled out. These are not ministers that are clearly spelled out. This position has no bearing in our law. It is not created by any law at all. So whatever this kind of amount that are being projected and pushed into an illegal position, it is ridiculous, and it's in no way it is a misappropriation of the highest order. In fact, if you tell Nigerians to cut their spending and adjust to things, you should also cut the cost of governance. These positions that are not created by laws, these positions that are not statutorily available in our laws, should be jettisoned. The wife should be able to take care of the husband at home, or the wife should be appointed into political position. This does not only go to the president. This goes to the president, the vice president, the governors, the deputy governors, the local government chairman, the vice local government chairman, and all. The recklessness in all this ascribing position. If you want this position so badly, go to the National Assembly and make a law that allows them. But you spending billions of naira into a position that is inexistent in our law. In fact, I am expecting that human rights lawyers, civil society organizations, people like Serap should be able to question this kind of thing. Take these kind of things to law. I will look at it. I will look at a possibility of even reaching out, initiating a court proceeding on this. It has got to stop. If need be, appoint the wife to either an SA or a minister or head of an agency that is created by law. But as long as that position stands, the office of the wife of the president, the office of the wife of the vice president, the office of the wife of the governor, the office of the wife of the deputy governor, the office of the wife of the local government chairman, the office of the wife of the vice local government chairman, it's a very ridiculous ascription. Now, away from that position, the next point is yacht. 5-point-something billion naira has been budgeted for yacht, presidential yacht. We are no longer talking about presidential fleets, air fleets. At the moment, people are even of the opinion that we should reduce the number of presidential jets and fleets that we have. We should be able to concession them, sell them off, or put them off for commercial purposes. Let it be running for commercial and bring money into Nigeria. At the point where we should be looking for ways to bring in money into the economy, we are extorting money from the economy itself, a dying economy. Our economy is almost becoming moribund, and it is bleeding, and we are still stabbing it with this kind of amorphous spending. It is ridiculous. There is no need for a presidential yacht. It is not a jamboree. It is not a pleasurable position. In fact, the presidency is a position that you have been called to service. It's like a laborer who is called to a work field. Now, if you call a laborer to your work field, the laborer begins to demand that you bring a bed for him to the work field, a place you ought to be working. Of what use? Of what economic use? Of what political use? Of what benefit would that yacht be to the nation, to the governance of the nation? Is it going to what is it going to provide? Is the yacht going to be generating an artificial intelligence? Is the yacht going to be generating money? Is the yacht going to be generating artificial policies that can propel the country from the state of agony that it is in, the bleeding state that it is in? Of what use, both economic, political, social benefit is the yacht? So these are unnecessary things that are done. Now, I saw where either 2.9 billion was budgeted for vehicles for wife of the governor, aside the office of the wife of the president, aside the money that has been budgeted for the office. If you put all this money together, you will be getting close to 20 billion. 20 billion that could have been spent into education. At the moment where our education system is dying off, we are seeking an investment into the human capacity. You can see that we no longer have people no longer want to go to school in Nigeria, and those who are here only want to do their first degree, and they do not want to extend their academic stay in Nigeria. Everybody wants to japa because our educational system has gone below the standard it used to be. Don't forget, in the 80s, in the 90s, foreigners used to come to Nigeria to school. But look at it today. The adverse is the case. The reverse is the case. You see, Nigerians, in fact, Nigerians now have a community in Canada. We now have community in UK. It's the number of persons that are in UK will form a whole state. Why? Because what they are looking for here is not here. And then the government is insincere in this kind of space. If the government tells us to buckle up, it should cut down on its spending. It should cut down the cost of its governance. It should cut down the cost that it uses to fund all this irrelevant, pleasurable lifestyle. It is not a government of lifestyle. Government is not a pleasure ground. Government is a serious business. These things, I am sure none of these persons taking this decision will do it in their private company. So why is it being done in a public governance space? If you have a company, you do not go about buying yachts. Instead, you want to multiply the revenue of your company.
All right, that's fair enough, and I think that is what the government should consider, particularly because the president said the other day that he feels the pain, and this is what we have to do.
Then he should act it out.
Yes, that is the message, I believe. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having
you. All right, that's all we can take for the Polity today. Don't forget to join us every weekday, 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. The Polity reaches you live from Abuja. Have a nice day. Mercy Babajide will be with you tomorrow. Bye for now.